Welcome to Occultists Anonymous and our Into the West Mage Chronicle. It's been a minute since the whole gang was together, but we're back.
We're back. Yay.
Special shout outs to followers, subscribers, everybody who supports us, shares us, name drops us in subreddit threads when people are like, hey, I want to learn mage. And I scroll through and I see somebody already name dropped Occultists Anonymous. And I'm like,
Woo!
Thank you.
Woo!
You know who you are because I know who you do it all the time.
Because we know who you are.
We love you.
When
That's what I'm talking about.
Their subreddit name matches their Discord name, I know who they are. But a special shout out to our patron supporters.
Mm-hmm.
The are back. 1D4 Con James, Adele, Alice, Aiden, Alexander, Alstrid, Bernie, Chris, Emil, Jeff, George, I finally finished my PhD, Cat Feathers, Klaus, Michael, Milo V3, Moku, Mozart D Minor, Nexus, Nick, Other Guy, Perry, Fu, Polka Dot Hubris, Porter, Puppeteer, Riafio, Shaxara, Starfish, Thomas, Verhex, Vortex, and Zoltan. Thank you all so much for your support.
And just a moment for finishing that PhD. Like, that's a major achievement. Awesome work.
We're gonna keep applauding that until you change your username.
We're putting these episodes out yet.
I know.
Why not?
Yeah, they don't even know.
I know.
They don't even know that we acknowledged it like seven times.
It legitimately just amuses me the entire time, every time, and especially Craig continuing to be like, also shout outs for the PhD. I'm like, yeah. Righto. When we last left the gang, they had done some individual stuff, but before then, it was the first night of the revival from the Protestant group that had come up from New York City. To arrive the same day as a Jesuit missionary squad up from Mexico City. See, it doesn't work quite the same way, does it? And
they must have been walking at a similar
Mexico
pace.
DF.
I got that, Ralph. I got it. I hate it, but I got it. So the first night of the revival was a big party. Almost everybody was there, even some of the missionaries from the Jesuit squad. Yeah. And then some shenanigans were noted. Sister Natalia kind of made a scoot out, and we couldn't tell where they had been going, but we sent the spirit of the revival to puppet her back.
So good.
And Isabel escorted Sister Natalia and Father Gabriel back down towards the camp that they have. Baba Sarah, and Legba secured the perimeter with a bit of a quarantine and studied the big spell that was there, technically before the quarantine, and provided willpower and mana for Catherine to dig into and really study this. I believe Isabel had a moment to study the spell as well. And both of you kind of looked at, like, this is some weird fate stuff and had to kind of work it out together. Yep. And then everybody kind of went their separate ways. I hope you watched those episodes. They haven't, because they're not up on YouTube yet. Hi, friends. This is Editor Drew. No, you didn't miss Ralph's episode. There was technical difficulties. You'll see it later. Okay, bye. So for all of them, they have no idea what has happened. Helena has a little bit of a clue that there was something with Isabella drop kicking somebody, and that's all she got. That's news
some hussy off to jail.
Correct. That's new for Ralph and Craig.
It's so good.
So what happened? Well, we will pick up with the four of them. Well,
I'll tell you what's going to happen. When we hear about this, Legba is going to politely request to copy Isabel's memory of it, and then he's going to have a screening with Baba Sarah, so they can sit there, enjoy some drinks, and enjoy the entertainment. He's so good.
That might be tricky.
All right, fair enough.
we'll let the story proceed forward.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, you're good. So we pick up with all three of you, sans Helena, waking up a little bit late. Ralph Legba had a long night in the astral, and body took a little bit to get finally settled, especially since the body was up and around and doing stuff while in the astral. And Baba Sarah, Theo, was working late into the night on a project. So it is definitely a late evening. Late morning for the rest of y'all getting up. Helena is already awake and probably active in the telepathic realm as you all start to wake.
You might be asleep.
Well,
because I woke up early. Well, I didn't wake up.
That's right.
I went to breakfast, came back, took a nap before going to teach in the afternoon.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
So I've been up, but I'm probably not up right now.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot you had forget it. I'm just going to stay up all the way to morning. And yep, that's right. So yeah, we'll pick up probably that afternoon, giving you all time to do various daily chores, check-ins, things like that, before you all have a chance to chat and bring stuff up, unless any of you have something that's particularly urgent and we're gonna jump right to it. Should my memory serve, nobody has anything urgent to deal with just yet.
Nope.
It feels urgent, but it isn't.
Yep.
It wants to do it immediately, but that's the nature of obsession, right?
So I will leave that up to all y'all on setting a scene wherever y'all might wish.
I kind of like the idea that every morning we all go and then check in. Morning, everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's telepathy immediately, right?
Yeah, and also
Isabel doesn't turn hers on for a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
That's
imagine
fine.
just the nature of mornings and trying to get through all your stuff. It's really hard to be going through certain tasks while also having a bunch of voices in your head trying to talk. It's no.
Speak for yourself.
Listen, you of all people probably have the hardest time because your mind is already split.
You do it for 10 years, it's fine.
That's true.
It's like reading a book with your right hand while you're driving on the freeway. Everyone does that, right? You gotta hey, come on. You have a finite amount of time to read during your day.
Occultists Anonymous does not suggest that you try and read and drive at the same time. That's what public transit is for.
Audiobooks? No, come on now.
So, yeah.
Professional drivers on a closed course.
Right.
Yes.
So yeah, is there a scene where y'all want to set up? I'll be honest, because of how things ended with Helena, I kind of like the idea of the four of y'all meeting up at the at Madame Robert's place.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it sounds good. Why not? Yeah, it's great idea.
Yeah, basically as soon as Helena sees Isabel, she's gonna be like, so I've heard some things. How was your evening? You're the talk of the town.
Am I?
You've had looks throughout the day too.
I can't imagine what for.
Really?
What have I done today?
What did you do
what
last
have you
night?
done?
Well, I had a lovely evening with Jules.
Like the smiles. Yes.
Apparently, according to Madame Robert, some hussy was stepping out with Jules, and you drop kicked her and drug her to jail.
That's not. No, that's not correct.
Is it incorrect?
It's
It's what people think happened.
oh. Well, sometimes when people see something, she like looks around, outlandish, they come up with what might have happened on their own, right?
Yes.
She like looks over at Catherine.
A feasible explanation
Sure.
that fits with their
So
worldview.
it could have been another woman hitting on my husband, or I could have.
For fun purposes, Jules is here.
Yeah.
Just so we can have Jules blushing
Uh-huh.
crimson.
Yeah, it could have been someone arm in arm with my husband walking back to my home. Or it could be that I was aloft and witnessed someone looking remarkably similar to myself walking arm in arm with my husband back to my house. And it wasn't so much a drop kick as a full speed flying dive from a mile up out of the air while telling him to duck.
Is this person alive?
They are.
Oh, okay.
They turned out to be remarkably interesting.
I am impressed by your forbearance.
Yeah, I was going to beat her to death for sure. But, talked it out. Went to the jailhouse. And,
Jules chimes
found out
in.
some...
Go ahead.
What's up?
Go ahead.
They had some wonderful conversations, first with her and then with Jules. And then retired for the evening.
I think Jules mentions that he was actually very forthcoming once we got to that.
This is one of the two parties that have arrived in town.
Unclear.
I'm curious.
Arrived with the Catholics, but seems to be a independent operative.
Okay.
Drew, would you remind me what their shadow name was?
Form.
Form.
His shadow name was Form. Just for
How
clarity there.
appropriate.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say
If I
that
could-
character, but...
Yep.
But yeah, turns out the person impersonating me was attempting to steal a grimoire. And found out enough info to find out that my darling husband is the sort of most obvious magical person in town. And went to go looking for it. By hook, crook, or... well... I guess hook. And he was a remarkable, affable man, rather nondescript, but I believe him to be one of your countrymen. Their cloak.
You don't say.
Mm-hmm.
Jules quickly chimes in and mentions not that it's one that came with you, but
No.
has arrived later.
Another Haitian.
What intrigue?
He
There
seems
will
to
be
be some
much
sort
to
of
discuss.
spy. Thief.
From?
As I said, independent operative. He has some sort of familiar.
Spy independently.
He had some sort of familiar that he uses as a bargaining chip. What might you call it?
A go-between?
Like a collateral. She like searches for the English word for a minute.
Of what nature?
Well, if this familiar is in the hands of his employer, they have a direct link to him at all times. And if he were to betray them, then...
Forgive me, I meant not the manner in which the collateral functions, but the nature of the familiar. What ephemeral nature?
I didn't find that out.
I'm certainly intrigued.
But I imagine it might be more along your lines than mine.
He smiles.
He seems to find his jobs amongst the astral.
Well then.
I forbade him from stealing from us. Did not forbid him from returning. And that if he wished to return and be in open and honest spirits with us, that he would be welcome in town. Though if he were to be showing back up for the same client, I asked him to be able to provide more open details of the nature of his client and the job itself.
Given recent events, I can't decide if we should take from this a lesson that we are way too careful in our dealings with the rest of the world, because everyone that's come to this town of a magical nature has been like either really arrogant or very reckless, or it just reinforces that we are right to be careful because of the shit we're going to be delivering to these assholes that come and pee in our pond.
I'm going to jump in real quick. Chris, do you remember what the grimoire was that they were looking for?
Oh, it goes without saying the grimoire is the one that Catherine awakened out of the supernal with.
Did he tell you how he knew of it?
Details from the client. So he got here, arriving incognito with the seers.
How did he pass the imp?
He did not mean harm to anyone.
Yeah.
I would. Well.
And to clarify real quick, because I know where you're going, Ralph. Form was sent here to locate the object, not to steal it, because that's actually a thing that.
Okay, cool. All right.
The two of them,
Isabel pointed that out. Yeah.
Isabel and Form went back and forth.
She very frustratingly says, technically, he did not mean us harm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Seems to relax a little bit. Like the more important thing was what the heck? He had an agreement, not the theft. Of course, he's worried about the theft. But wait a minute, right? Like,
no,
here I go imping again.
The big takeaway I think even Chris and Isabel had in that episode was, people are starting to find the loophole.
Yeah.
Right. They know if I want to steal something, I can send somebody to go find information about it.
Yeah.
That would be like one of the two big takeaways that Isabel would kind of clarify as like points of discussion before asking, like points that can be discussed after we all say what else we did. If anyone else was up to something interesting, is that one, people are starting to find loopholes in the imp, and two, that also means that we're getting a reputation in various and sundry circles within magedom.
Well, I might have had something to do.
Since last night, or you just mean in the general of your works in the astral and whatnot?
Primarily the latter.
Okay. But somewhat the former? Let's hear.
What happened?
Well, first I'd like to ask a follow-up question, and then I'm happy to share. The follow-up question is, and he turns to Catherine and he says, do you remember what I said, which I now realize might have been somewhat cryptic? The night of your, the morning after your awakening, when you were there with the new grimoire and coming into your own.
Catherine totally remembers. Drew does not.
Yeah. He says, there was a discussion and I said something not in the sense of possessiveness, but an offering of a manner in which you can protect things that you value, that there was a concern about somebody coming and taking it from you. And I said, well, they couldn't take it from my Oneros because I wasn't insisting that it be any object like this would be in your own. One of the things I do is craft grimoires in new and creative ways. It's what I've been spending the past decade on, and I have a means by which you could, if you so desire, to create an astral replica of any grimoire you like inside of your own mind. There is also, of course, somewhat more dangerous, but definitely, I think, worth considering method of secreting objects directly within your own mind.
And she nods and she says, that's actually, she kind of looks over at Isabel. Did you have any other thing? Because I didn't have a very eventful night, but there was a thing that Theo and I discussed that I should bring up to all of you.
Proceed. You have the floor, sister.
So I've been thinking of having my own sanctum. Not that there's anything wrong, like she motions between her and Theo. We're great, we're fine, but I want to have my own space and something where I can write stories and I can study, but it's a place that feels connected to everybody, because Theo has her lab and the farmlands. Max kind of patrols everything. Legba is there in the astral, and Isabel handles all of the people. I want to be somewhere central to all of that, and I would like to grow the space around the hollow to have my place there, since nobody else is really set up in that space. If that's all right. Theo said I have her vote, and then I approve my own. You can see she's really trying to make this this very official approving kind of thing, which I think most of you are going to roll your eyes at, but
of course.
I will approve with one condition. And then he smiles. This is his attempt at trying to be endearing. It's going to seem a little awkward. And he says that you allow us to use the means available to us to aid you in making it nice.
She nods. She's like, yes, I've already conscripted Theo into, making the space underground, not be
constructing.
Right. And then kind of realizing that was approved, and I think I saw Helena nodding, and then kind of looks over to Isabel. Oh, okay. Yep, that was a thing, and then I will have a sanctum where I can, and kind of motions back over to Legba, find a secure place for my grimoire to really study it and be serious about being one of the wise.
I'm delighted to hear you say that.
Okay, thank you. And then she kind of sits back and sidles up next to Theo. She's like, I did a good job. I'm set.
Make it weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Goche says, this is not of prime importance, but I'd like for us to come back to this at some point. I've thought of ways in which we might consider connecting our sanctums via geomancy. It might aid us at some point in the future.
Jules, by the way, is writing all of this down 100% secretary with the minutes, right?
What do you mean?
I have a sanctum now. Sorry, I didn't
answer your question.
bring it up to you all.
Oh, putting down roots. Excellent.
Oh.
Kind of. I climbed the hills and dedicated a space up there under the stars.
Would you say maybe you sanctified the space?
Yes.
Sanctified.
Where is this space?
Not as high as possible, but close to it, higher than people generally go. I found cleared out a reasonably sized little area for doing workings.
Wonderful.
The top of the ridge line, basically. So it would be.
Legbug answers Isabel.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I think it might be worth it to connect our sanctums via ley lines or some other. He then says, loosely, some physically arcane means. I think a conduit between our workshops could have some strategic utility at some point in the future. It's just something I've been thinking about idly recently.
Now, I'm sort of discussing this from a place of ignorance, but how would that be possible?
Oh.
If they're all different, vastly different.
Well, the way I think about it is this. We are all members of a coven, and our relationships with each other affect us in ways that produces a resonance of our relationship. I think it would be challenging to connect it via the direct symbolism of the specific magics we work, or the paths we walk and see through, the supernal realms we're connected to, and the watchtowers on which we have signed our names. But the resonance of who we are, the resonance of the coven, is something that is present in all of our sanctum. And I think a channel for that resonance would reinforce it, and it might be something we could draw on. It also might not work. It's never something I've done, but just something I've been thinking about lately, that there might be some utility there. Even as far away as on the ridgeline, for example. Teleportation is nice, but imagine traveling through mana or directing something through mana, a conduit for Helena's magic. She could work something on the ridgeline that would then come into our sanctum. I mean, I'm really throwing out ideas here, but that's the basics of what I was considering.
Again, this seems to work well for the three of you.
Why not you?
Just I don't know that I'm necessarily on board either, but
Why not me? I haven't studied Prime.
You wouldn't have to do it.
Then is it still my sanctum? If there are doors with which I cannot travel.
He then scratches his chin and he says,
I don't even have a place, but this would be my concern.
It wouldn't need to be, and then he pauses, he says, wait. He says, what I'm thinking of is not merely a way that those of us who have the Prime Arcanum can channel Prime between our different respective spaces and thereby exclude you. What I am primarily saying is a way for the things that we do that reinforce our coven to also reinforce everyone else at the same time. That's primarily it. I think one way to say it would be that when we are doing things that enhance our vibes as a group, the vibes go out and they come to you. And when you do things to reinforce the coven, those vibes come back to me.
Would this work much like our first bit of ley magic?
Maybe.
Is it likely to generate essence?
I think there could be a way for it to generate new essence, a font of essence that actually, now that you mention it,
spirit of the coven.
Legba smiles. And he says, I hadn't even thought of that. Yes, I think it
Isabel
would.
like reaches into her little bag that she sat down
Mhm.
and like rolls out a map of the town,
Yeah.
marking out like Theo's place. Does Cloak have a sanctum?
Yeah. It's in the mines.
In the
In
mines.
the mines, right? The mines.
Into the mines. Sorry.
Up in the hills on the ridgeline, and then sorry, I missed maybe a detail of where Catherine said she was going to put hers.
In the Hollow,
Hollow.
basically the fields west of town.
Yeah. So prime sort of wiggly shaped magicians. Where do I make mine?
Mm.
It'd be nice if I could make it look constructed.
Mm-hmm.
And if it didn't, maybe we don't make it look like something profane.
Mm.
If we were to draw it all out on a map with lines and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
A good thing for y'all to table for later.
Yep.
But I like that.
Cool. I hadn't even thought of the Spirit of the Coven. That's awesome. Way to go, Chris. That's such a good idea.
Thanks.
The spirit
Well,
nerd.
So good. So good.
Well,
it has to happen now.
part of that discussion is like before she gets to the idea of saying the spirit of the coven is the wondering in her own head of like, I wonder what it tastes like.
Oh yeah. That's
like,
good. Yeah.
Like it's not a huge part of Petrichor, but it's a big part of Isabel as a magician.
Oh, yes.
Is that like feral, animalistic, like what's the word I'm looking for?
A little more
like
uncivilized,
unrefined Thyrsus energy, whereas like Petrichor has been whittled down and sharpened into a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And
that makes sense.
The raw gnosis of Isabel is more just like a beast itself.
I'm here for it.
Yep. Okay, so sanctum. You something else you did perhaps?
Oh yes. Perhaps Theo, you'd like to share first?
Oh, I just had a
quiet night at home.
Just sounds like Cloak doesn't really want to tell us.
mine would be really quick. I had an introspective night. Had some discussions with my daemon, and then got seized by a bit of a crafting bug and spent some time at the forge.
No, actually, do you mean that in any way literally? Is there a big bug?
No. I was seized with inspiration to create, and I spent a lot of the night down in the forge.
Now,
What did you
I'm going to clarify real quick because Craig is downplaying the coolness of this. Theo went full Iron Man mode, smithing, and in the midst of it, pulled the Songbird move and started meditating into her own Oneros while smithing.
Well, that's what I was about to say. While I was in the middle of crafting, I sort of reached a contemplative state and slipped into my Oneros and had a conversation with my daemon, and I think we've above and beyond like the detente that we've achieved it. I think we've gone beyond that, and her and I now have a path forward in harmony, or at least less discord.
What word did you use?
What's that?
No, that that one.
Detente.
Yes. Sorry,
I have sullied my tongue with English. Okay. I shall not do it with French.
We had worked out a non-aggression agreement, shall we call it that? a cessation of open hostilities.
Sure.
But during my conversations with my daemon, we went further, and I think now we have a unified goal to connect us.
That's very good. I know you were having
Inner turmoil.
A little bit of difficulty aligning yourselves, but no, that's good.
Yes.
What did you make?
Catherine pulls out.
No, I haven't given it to her yet.
Oh, that's right.
That's it's a secret.
Oh, so it's something for Catherine.
Kicking Isabel under the table.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I used all my romance last night, saving my husband from an imposter version of myself.
For a moment, Atratus and Songbird pop into existence there.
Like
fucking
laughs when Isabel says that and claps for her, but not in a mocking way, nodding, right?
Yep.
Like, yeah, that's right.
I'm going to hang on to it for an appropriate moment.
Mm.
Or an
Thank you,
inappropriate.
Isabel.
I also crafted.
Ooh.
What have you made?
I'm gonna pull out and sit on the table. It's a small handful of buttons. It's 4 of them.
Buttons!
And I mean, if you look at them, you can see the magic on them.
Except for
These
Chris.
are for, or I mean, they're. Can't you see that there's spells on them even if you don't have
I
time
guess
sight?
that's true, but not necessarily, yeah.
Yeah, these are for some of our sleepwalkers in town, and I was thinking this one, I'm gonna pull out the one that had the relinquished spell, or
Mhm.
the one that doesn't need to be held,
Mm-hmm.
could go to Veloja. They are protections. Just passively by having them, you have the wards over you to protect you from other magics. And they have a one-time offensive use in case things get dangerous. Because if things are getting more risky around here, I want those among us who are not so magical to have some sort of protection. They will, assuming there is a storm, call lightning down on assailants if they are removed off of someone's clothes. So if you have them sewn on and then you snatch it off. I don't know how you would communicate that trigger to Veloja, but the others will all be maintained by the sleepwalker who has it. This one does not need anyone to hold on to the spell. So I figured she could have it.
Drew, correct me if this. Veloja is not a sleepwalker.
No, she's not.
Okay.
So for the most part, just having it would provide wards and signs.
Yeah.
You know, if she's being attacked by a spell, she's already going to be dealing with some quiescence and dissonance anyways. So just having that as protection is there. You may not even tell her about, if things go bad, rip this button off and throw it at the bad guy. You might not
I don't
mention that to her, but
at the very least, yeah, it'll be a shield for her.
Okay. Thank you.
Thoughtful.
So yes, that took all night.
the dice were not with Ash. And so we had the other 3, and I'm trying to remember, it was Sanite, I think.
It
one was going to Jules.
It was Messy J.
Messy J,
Sunny
thank
J.
you. Yes, we were going back and forth when we were playing. I was like, I can't remember. Yes,
Which is
Messy
which,
J.
yeah.
Yep. Sunny J actually leads.
Sunny J is Mambo Etoile.
Right.
And so Messy J chose not to.
Right, is the sleepwalker and is also the sheriff who helped out
deputy,
Isabel.
Deputy.
Yep.
Deputy.
And didn't you say we have one other sleepwalker who is deputy?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to both of them, one to Jules and then one to Veloja.
Ooh.
Yep. And just to cover, like, narratively speaking, we will get these passed out and they will have to hold the spell. But that also
question about
keeps it
that then.
from being relinquished. Go ahead.
Jules is currently holding a spell. He is holding the spell for Isabel the amanuensis in his mind. So is there room? He got room for that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's related to your connection with the person, right?
Correct.
Isn't there a maximum number of spells you can hold?
Yes, per connection.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So it does mean, and this actually came up with Titus even, where it's like, oh, yep, I can hold a spell for everybody back in the rookery. I can hold a spell for everybody, but it also does mean an increasingly larger and more valuable target.
Yeah. There you go.
But yes, it does allow for them to hold the spell that is actually going to be powering the button that is protecting them. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Isabel just kind of squeezes Jules' thigh under the table. So, you hear that, honey? You're valuable.
He was like, yeah. But yeah, Jules, since Jules is definitely there, thinks you, accepts the spell. So, hey, you have a little bit more of your spell slots back. Also, shout outs to Helena for showing up to this meeting with 0 mana and 1 willpower.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What?
I didn't sleep. I have just enough life magic to give me the energy to function. I took like a 2-hour nap this morning before I had to go teach.
I'm gonna just give her a pat on the shoulder and channel 4 mana into her.
Sure.
Need me to roll?
No.
Okay.
Definitely not for that little of a thing.
So I have 5 mana and 2 willpower left, so we're on the same sort of status. You know?
Yep.
Imagine.
Well, I can have 20 mana. I had 20 mana.
Yep.
So I couldn't help but notice that you've been volleying the ball a lot.
Just sort of turning and looking at Click.
Yeah. Oh, were you going? Because actually, there was one other thing that you set up and prepared, but we decided to leave off doing until the episode.
Right. I'm trying to remember. Right.
We can do it later, but I did want to remind you that was a thing.
It makes sense to do it right here at the table.
True. Okay, carry on.
There's one more Isabel thing too, that she hasn't received the report yet, unless it showed up at dawn. Would have shown up at the other spy. My spy.
Yes, your spy did show up at dawn because I think that was the direction that you had given it, because it was half now, half later, or something like that. And yes, the 2 of them were well behaved and never left. And I can't remember if there's anything else you were looking for.
Evidence of other majory.
Right. So no, not that it saw. Though, of course, in retrospect, setting that spy and then finding form afterwards, it was like,
it was a.
Yeah, I was cackling. I was like, man, if you'd done this earlier, I would have had a far more interesting situation with form. But yes, I
hired a bat spirit.
Cool.
And let him drink my essence blood.
Oh yeah.
And sent him off to go and spy in the camp to make sure they didn't try and sneak back into town or anything.
Awesome, Zubat.
Yeah. And I will go so far as to mention that the bat also confirmed that form left town. Or rather, a weird rat left town.
Yep. Classic.
Yep.
Classic form. What a guy.
Form for the rest of the players. Form had been thrown into prison cell and was like, "Yep, jig is up." Turned into his normal form, wearing Isabel's clothing, and then Isabel's like, "Okay, get out of town." And Form said, "Yes, ma'am." Shrunk to a rat and scurried out.
Okay, that's the way to do it.
Yep.
So we might hear from him again.
I hope so.
I had fun playing Form. Form was a lot of fun.
Drew was
Seems
a
like
real
an
kid about it.
interesting fellow.
If he's finding jobs in the astral, I will be searching for him.
So just to circle back to Cloak,
Yes.
Your-
Yes.
evasion is beginning to intrigue me.
Ah, I see. Very well. Well, there are things to share. I will share in reverse order of importance. Earlier, Isabel brought to our attention that we might be gaining more fame or recognition than we realized. And I hinted that I might have might be somewhat responsible for that. Our praises have been sung in Metropolis for some time. And it started when I announced at a meeting I convened somewhat regularly that we were the ones who brought justice to the Eater of the Supernals. Not that we were the ones who dispensed the justice, but we were responsible for ensuring that justice was brought to him. And thereby, we deserve recognition for that. And I decided to, well, in retrospect, I realized it could have been a more subtle way to do it, but state explicitly that any of those who oppose us or the people that we protect will be dealt with in kind.
That's quite a
See.
proclamation.
Just sort of a
And-
challenge, broadly speaking.
And see Cloak putting his tongue in his cheek and saying, well, and in retrospect, indeed, considering my status, I realize perhaps it might not have just drifted silently among a few mages I know, but perhaps a crier or herald, stentor, might have been traveling through the alleys and the thoroughfares of Metropolis, repeating it probably word for word with the affectations of my voice and maybe even mimicking my appearance.
So, you mean to tell me that you caused the following situation to be had? Deep in the realms of human consciousness, in the place that represents all of the cities of the world and the connectedness of humankind and civilization, you put out just a sort of raw proclamation that want some, come get some.
Yes.
In the collective consciousness.
She gives him a hug.
I'm so
It's all I
proud of
ever
you.
wanted. God, I hope they wear a black cloak when they show up in the town.
And
Jules?
for Craig, clarification, it's not the collective soul, it's not the collective thought, it's the collective soul of humanity. It's a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And Cloak says, and I did this a bit before I realized how I felt about violence as a first resort. So I don't think I might be so inclined to be as confrontational with such a proclamation had I felt that way, but he shrugs
okay.
and he
I'll
says,
do it
I
for
feel
you."
no regrets. Thank you. So of course he
I'm
hugged
gonna
Isabel
need-
back. So
Oh, an entire white leather outfit.
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yes.
Can someone make this happen for me?
Yes.
Okay, well maybe this
Do
is
you,
a reasonable time to explain.
go ahead.
You know, I do my rounds every day. I've well-worn sigils essentially around the town.
Mm.
I put those to use.
Oh.
It is a last resort in case things get bad.
Mhm.
Chris is
But-
intrigued.
Anyone who knows how can use that, the town essentially, to summon my avatar.
What does that mean?
You've seen it.
That avatar, the one that showed up and stood behind you,
right.
in
That
the
one.
Tempest, the
So,
flaming
yes,
winged angel. Yeah, that one.
I made a soul stone with a little, because it is formed out of my soul, and have hidden it away. I imagine I would have buried it pretty securely, like in one of the sigils. And yeah, I will. Do you have to be a mage to do it?
Technically, it would be an imbued, and we are, for anybody at home who's yelling and screaming, yes, we're playing some funky rules. Buzz off. Yeah, it's if somebody technically knows how, and it is
you turn the town into an imbued item.
Yes.
The ground of the town, the territory, the space of the
Just like
town.
I'm really intrigued by this. Are you saying that in your patrol of the town and this, moving around it, I imagine you've gone a somewhat circular path. You've placed sigils and you've allowed a manner in which someone can activate this and transmute some arcane energy. You've made a transmutation circle in the town.
Sure.
I suppose you could say it like that. Yeah.
Did it cost an arm and a leg?
Thank you, Chris.
Again, the round
Thank you.
big and random, and once I guess sort of settled into my role here, they became even less so. And yeah, I can tell you all how to do it, and trusted sleepwalkers. It will only work once. I would have to do it again if I wanted to remake it, I suppose.
It's good that you said that before you told me how to activate it. Because I would have just absolutely popped off immediately. Does it work like this? Pop. There we go. All right, well.
So if I could step away a little bit, what I'm hearing is that several of us have sort of individually come to the same conclusion that we need to, we're effectively abandoning our low profile. Am I getting a read on that?
Preparing to make that potential change if shit hits the fan. Yes, and you all did it more or less like separate from one another.
Yeah.
Some people were more low profile than others.
Interesting. I shall have to think of my contributions to this.
I mean, you bring the storm.
The storm? The ever-present cloud cover of Purgatory
It's
Bluff?
not ever-present. It's
That's
very
fair.
nice weather most days.
That's fair. It's just been really cloudy right now. Yeah.
I mean, and just to talk about, I don't know why you don't like build a sanctum on a cloud.
Seems kind of derivative.
It's like, already got one of those.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Like, what are you going to do? Make a smaller Eiffel Tower?
What if your sanctum was in the shadow?
So, sorry, I grew up going to King's Dominion, and they have a small Eiffel Tower there as an amusement.
Yep.
So it just really got me there for a second.
That's great.
Catherine kind of turns after Helena's revelation and then turned back to Legba and goes, wait, hang on. Did you say reverse order? You challenging everybody was the least?
Right, yeah.
Wait, that was the least important?
Yes.
I didn't know what you meant by reverse order. Because it could be in any order and then you reverse it. You didn't say reverse from least to most.
You're too shrewd. Too shrewd.
So that was
Catherine was not allowed going to let that sit too long.
Now you've got small ones to tell us about.
No, I have ones of somewhat bigger importance. From my perspective, to be fair, I mean, my attitudes are different than yours.
Sure.
The second is that, well, I visited Camelot, as I said I would, to search for Sir Lucan and have a conversation. And naturally, as I am wont to do, while I was searching for him in a way, which I'll elaborate on, I was doing something in a different part of the astral. So while my astral body was monitoring or receiving input about travels to reach Sir Lucan, I was in Purgatory Bluff. I realized it might seem confusing because I was physically, of course, not there. I was in the astral, right? And my body was in one part of the Temenos, and then my attention was there, but my attention was also being somewhat filled. My memories were being filled by something. Anyway, I'll make this more explicit. I created a Goche that I think I want to introduce this technique to all of you, that I can attach to something that is traveling through the astral, and I hope perhaps it even potentially do so here in the material, that will then send sensory input, or at least memories, directly into my short-term memory so that I can then access them. And I would have to, of course, encode them or make them more permanent later on. But I could effectively, what I did is I placed a Goetia on something that was traveling to look for Sir Lucan. And while I was paying attention to something else, I could then pause and review my short-term memory. And so even though I wasn't looking at, I could get the information that had already occurred or is occurring from my own memories. So instead of directly telepathically communicating with each other, if you wanted to share, you could just share that information and then review it at your leisure.
Legba is the most cyberpunk mage. Like, yeah, I just have
Like a little SD card.
I have a separate entity pumping memories, and so basically has two files: my actual memories and these other memories that were happening at the same time to somebody else that I totally recognize as my own memories.
That's right.
Legba's session was weird.
It was real weird.
I had to write down a couple notes as we were going.
It was real weird. So
At this, Helena's just gonna kind of nod. I don't do.
We don't do the mind stuff over here. Yeah.
That sounds very interesting for you.
It was. I'm pleased
like,
that it worked.
Isabel just like throws back a little sip of her whiskey and then just like, yeah, I fully just blacked out the whole time you were speaking.
Jules has like copious notes and has questions for later.
Honey, did you get the thing about my white leather coat?
Just like a little annotation to the side. Yeah. What was it? Anyways, so please continue
While I was searching for Sir Lucan, of course, which was the main reason why I was there, I went to Purgatory Bluff to see if I could do something about the nature of the mine. So we've discussed emboldening the town, protecting it. And I thought perhaps if the mine was a center, was a focus for our protective resources, that it might be useful. So I attempted something which is obvious. I shouldn't say obvious. In retrospect, somewhat naive, but I needed to try. I tried to, through exhortation and encouragement, alter the mountain, the hill in Purgatory Bluff, to cause it to change form and thereby influence its representation in the material. That did not work. Yes, go ahead.
Quick question. Are you trying to get me fully eaten by a big spider?
These are things I did not bring up to Legba at the time, but were definitely in my thoughts because I was ready for a very different episode with you. Please continue, Legba.
No, of course I am not. Also, I am aware that the mind is important. I didn't want it to become less of the mind, less of the darkness, less of its resonance. I tried to encourage the mind to be richer. And so I was able to give it a temporary, like I was able to enhance what seemed like its rockiness slightly, but that didn't work because in the astral, just as in the material, in order to manipulate a mountain, a hill, I would have to use the matter arcanum, and that didn't work. So this was really an attempt to see if interacting with a Goetia that represents something in the material would change the nature of the material, and it didn't. However, the important thing here, and this is why I consider it more important than proclaiming to Metropolis and thereby the rest of humanity that we're prepared to fight anybody who disagrees with us, is that two things. The first is that the mountain is now awake. Apparently, no one had ever engaged it directly.
In the Temenos.
In the Temenos. It now has a, he realized he says this, right? Because that's what it means to him to be awake, right? And then when people pause, like, did you say the mountain's about to talk? Something like that.
Do I have to go now?
Yeah. He says the mountain. Jeez, I wrote down the name. What name did you choose, Drew? Thank you very much. The mountain is named Neachis. Or we know you said Neachis. That's what Neachis said. Yeah. Neachis. The Goche of the mountain, the hill, has chosen a name. That is how Neachis prefers to be referred to. It now has a consciousness. And because it has a consciousness, things will happen. It is also requested that one of the ways to support it is to make it more sacred, reinforce the resonance it already has.
Like, an Abrimos putting a sanctum on top of it.
Yep.
Which I told you, actually, I was like, this works out really well.
Quite conveniently works with what you did, with what you were doing.
Just so I don't want to exceed my what the fucks energy. How many things are on your list of things you
left to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay, so the second thing of importance here, before I get to the thing that you probably all want to hear about, which of course,
how many more things are
really that
four? So we're on 2.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose we're on 2.
Gotta pace myself.
Isabel flashes her fate sight just to make sure that there wasn't some sort of like Kismet spell to make all these things work at the same time. For some nefarious purpose that we all haven't been tricked into acting in line with each other.
Trust me, doing all 4 of these and you guys are just like, here's this thing, we're all kind of on the same page, and I'm like, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm clearly an underachiever.
I mean,
so Legba then
I
says,
technically did the least, but
so Legba then says, so Neachis being awake, being a real Goche construct in the Temenos of Purgatory Bluff, is really meaningful. It needs to be appreciated that the hill now has an identity. And that leads me to something I will likely need to do to satisfy curiosity and also see if there is a way to really do what I was aiming to do in the first place, which is I think there might be a way to actually change the world through the astral. I'm confident that it must be possible in some way. And I now think that it can't happen through the Temenos. I think it must happen through the Anima Mundi. So at some point in the near future, I must go talk to the rocks. That's what and see what will happen.
Sure. Yep. That's the way to do it.
I mean,
you can just talk to the rocks.
Yeah. Of all the things you've said, that makes the most sense.
Thank you. Over here doing basic arithmetic by using calculus.
Yeah. And so he says, and now we come to the thing that I first saw in my memories as it was occurring.
Number 3.
Number 3.
A big one to come. Okay.
I thought this was
no. I suppose this would be number 4. I mean, talking about the Anima Mundi is, from my perspective, the third thing, and I consider it of greater import than Neachis being awake.
You haven't done anything in the Anima Mundi yet.
That's right. We haven't, and okay. I wish. Yeah, I haven't gone there. No, there's not enough time, and
I think that might have been first then. Just
Yeah,
for
Okay, fair
Right.
enough.
sailing references.
All right. I just, I mean, it is, well, fair enough.
Wait
We're
till you
moving
see what number 1 is first.
on.
Oh, you mean
No.
reverse?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Number 4. Yeah, okay.
The-
The first one,
So-
number 4. Yeah.
So while I was having this conversation with Niacus and awakening the mountain in the Temenos and forming a new relationship,
as one does.
as one does, I was, paying attention to my memories until a point that I realized I now needed to go, or at least engage the consequence of that. So the Goche was barking at me this whole time, and what I saw, kind of in pieces and flashes, was the bark attached to the Herald in Camelot. And the Herald was traveling, and the Herald got gradually more grotesque as it was traveling through the realms of the Temenos. At first, it was a herald, and then it changed into some kind of like peculiar, like shrunken, hanging Goetia creature. I thought, and then eventually it became more like bandaged, like, and then it seemed like a corpse, and it traveled across a number of places, of course, that are connected thematically, and eventually reached the realm of religion. Well, this, of course, intrigued me greatly, naturally. Excuse me, being a priest myself.
Sorry.
But that is where I saw that this herald had transformed into. I don't have a lot of information about this. I was able to identify what specifically this is. I was able to identify the name for this, but I don't have all the information about it, of course, right? I mean, identifying the names for things in the astral for me is rather trivial, but all the information attached to the name and the history is harder, right? Because I don't have the context for it. But there's something called a Grigori. I don't know what that is. And
Like
it looks strange.
Jules pats you on the shoulder and says, "That's Gregorian."
That's the same word.
Oh, I see.
Close, but not close.
Yeah, so I'll pronounce it slightly differently. Yes, that's a good point, Isabel. It is an excellent point. So Grigori, Grigori, rather than Gregorian, because I didn't catch the significance of a Catholic association. But anyway, so this Grigori is moving, and I don't know why. And eventually, it makes its way to Sir Lucan, who is wearing an iron seal over his chest and basically a cassock, revealing that he is a prelate, as we had somewhat suspected, but didn't know for sure. He is definitely clearly talking to whoever, or not whoever. He's talking to. Did he say the father? I think he said the father, right? He referenced that real quick, Drew.
He
I wanna make
serves
sure
the father.
it's-
He doesn't speak to, but he obviously
Sure, fair
gets the
enough.
dreams.
Yeah, fair enough. I just want to make sure he referenced the father so that
Mhm.
Legba could repeat that without me bringing in information that's out of character.
Yep.
Okay. So, Sir Lucan there doing what tasks one does when they serve the father, apparently directly. And then Sir Lucan was apparently surprised to see the Grigori there, who then said that King Arthur was summoning him. And anyway, so long story short, Sir Lucan noticed my bark and then came back to the throne room. We had a conversation there. He was a bit miffed about this, but I explained, hey, I need to get his attention. And he then explained why I revealed to him that we had found this spell and said, hey, what are you doing? This is, he's transgressed on the boundary once again. And he made it very plain to me that is what they actually care about. And he offered a deal. Now, Legba puts up his hands. He says, I'm not necessarily in favor of this at all. I'm presenting this to you, okay? Because it's something that we need to, as a group, consider thoughtfully, okay? Please. Regardless of how superficially abhorrent it might seem. So Lucan stated that Sister Natalia was one of his agents and was sent there to interact with the spell that we have quarantined, which I haven't shared with him, with Sir Lucan, of course. And that the whole point of them being there, the whole point of the Catholic mission being there, was for Sister Natalia to engage with that spell and then take Heartache into herself so that Heartache becomes a possession of the Father. And so Lucan said that he is absolutely confident that we would experience no interaction. Well, maybe not that precisely, but no real interest from the serpents, or for that matter, the seers ever again, if we were to allow that to happen.
I have perhaps a slight reservation as to letting an entity known as Heartbreak come into the possession of an organization that twists the power of religion and our Lord God towards worldly domination, spiritual domination.
I
I
also-
agree with you in
Which
that
is to
respect.
say, I'm being incredibly patient with the rest of this conversation to not go invisible, fly down there, and kill her right now so that she cannot take it.
I commend you
Yes.
for that.
I don't believe that the serpents would leave us alone if we continued on our path of liberating their subjugated peoples and breaking their machine. They might not retaliate against us for what we've done already, but I do not believe in the future, if we continue on our way, that we will not get their attention. But yes, mostly that. I don't want the seers to have, the
Anything they
father
want.
to have heartache.
Heartache.
For everybody who maybe have forgotten, that is the name that the Time Dog gave the entity.
The
Shout out
being
to my boy
of
Time
many
Dog.
brains.
What up?
A single entity with many minds.
Yes, Legba says, not to interrupt you, Theo, but I will add for context, the reason why I'm bringing this to you instead of just rejecting it is, one, of course, we're a coven, we make decisions together. Two, I think it's important for us to understand from our perspective and limited knowledge the reasons why they might be willing to make this deal. And also considering the fact that I believe we can trust Sir Lucan's rigid sense of honor to be honest about some aspect of what he's sharing. We cannot trust him. However, the thing that we can trust is that a man who spends most of his time in an elaborately constructed dollhouse that allows him to play out fantasies of honor, and who's participating in an organization that is constantly trying to bend him against that, may be one for whom it is a pillar of his identity to be as honest as he can in dealings with people he believes deserves that for the sake of his appearance. So the nature of my conversation with him is something that I think we can trust. The nature of the seers being trustworthy with their motivations is not. I'm not suggesting that. And so with that basis, we should consider why they might be interested in it, and therefore why they might possibly relinquish whatever quest they're on to do things against us. If this is the main reason why they're here, that can help us consider how we move forward.
Kind of brings me to a question I had. I don't think we've clarified amongst ourselves what our response is going to be to the shit that went down last night from our guests.
Oh, I made it quite clear.
Okay. Are we responding, or are we giving them another chance?
Oh, it's not sort of another chance. It's just sort of this is what will happen to you if you fuck with us, our territory, any of our mysteries, or anything else within our realms.
Okay.
So technically a second chance, but it'll be quick retribution.
So
Does Sister Natalia know that she works for?
she does not.
Okay, so she
No.
wasn't lying to me.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
this
she's
is-
just a pawn.
She is.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the
She's a
seer
religious
layers and
zealot
layers.
turned to religious zealotry for a different god.
Hmm.
No, she knows she's definitely a seer. She has exarchal dreams, so she is also a prelate, but she does not realize that she is a pawn in serpent schemes.
Yeah.
She
I
did
imagine
recognize the
that's-
name serpent. It was surprised that
Yeah,
Isabel knew about it.
Yeah, they seemed quite intrigued that I knew about their boogeyman.
Hmm.
If he's
So
so
what-
honorable, why don't we just duel him?
I don't think it would change things.
I mean, if I kill him, it's one less of them to bother me.
But that also
Right.
gets rid of the one we can talk to.
You know where to find another one.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep. And then like on that cue, right? Like Legba says, I think you would enjoy fighting him less than you would enjoy fighting the one who originally transgressed. And we, of course, can reach her anytime we want. Or at least
He was
reach what she
blonde,
likely
right?
is. Yes.
I think so.
Isabel just starts letting out just like a string of foul language about the blonde, white, so and so from so and
British.
questions of her parentage and
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
relations with various creatures, large and small, and it's all under her breath. She would never,
Not in Madame Robert's place.
not in Madame Robert's place. Thankfully,
this
Madame
is-
Robert is getting up there in years and doesn't hear as well these days.
Helena would argue otherwise.
Compared to when Isabel was living there.
That's probably fair. So yeah, Catherine kind of leans in, and so we're not going to give it to them. And
Well, yeah, I think, of course.
Do we go study it again? Do we take that spell down? How do we prevent them from gaining access?
We quarantine the spell.
Quarantine the space, but yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, which effectively,
Mm-hmm.
correct me, memory being what
Mhm.
it is. That was Archmastery.
The scaffolding of the spell used art mastery magic in its creation.
So that's not something we could dispel.
Not
As far as we
necessarily.
know.
If it was an archmage's spell, no. But if it was like an imbued item or something that they had to cast it with,
Correct.
it could have been made by an archmage but cast by someone who wasn't.
Yep. Which I will go ahead and jump in that Helena definitely knows what a Grigori is.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, I'm just like, yeah. Mhm.
Panopticon doesn't exist yet, but their
Oh,
tools
okay.
do. Yep.
Mm.
The Panopticon hasn't claimed all the Grigori as theirs
Ah.
just yet.
Thank you.
But
But
I just feel
the
that a lot.
Watchers.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then, yes, you would definitely know, especially because a lot of what you did was fight seers. Yeah, seers cheat sometimes and pull off imperial magic with special items that will enable them to cast a specific spell in a specific way. The same way imperial magic works in the book, where you have to set everything up to be able to cast this one spell. They're able to do it, and they'll basically have, oh, here's a magic wand, lets me cast this specific spell for this specific condition, and now this thing is useless. But that's how
They get
they don't have to.
presents
Mm-hmm.
from their gods.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to
Like-
call them gods, but they think they are.
I mean, the word God is just a term people use to describe something.
But if we do
gods.
dispel it, that reveals, like, that gives them some intelligence.
Yes, and he
Yes.
and that brings up an important point. Sir Lucan did casually mention that he has the spell in his control
Yeah, he flexed
and
that.
was able to, yes, and was able to observe that we had not dispelled it.
You're making my argument for me.
Well, no, if we
A
if you dispel
surefire
it-
way to end a spell is kill the fucker who cast it.
true,
It
but
relinquishes the spell.
just consider this.
unsafely.
If they know that it's dispelled, they'll try again in another way that might be more difficult for us to counter or be aware of.
Yes.
As long as they don't think they've failed, there's no reason for them to try again, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Look, I think we're all in favor of you dispatching our opponents if that is, again, if that is the recourse that they are making clear is the only one available. But it certainly shouldn't be at first, and especially in this situation when they have so many resources and they have so much forethought. We are intrinsically limited in our ability to counter some of the things they do. So any moment to gain some insight into their motivations is useful, and I think we should take full use of it. Make full use of it.
As go ahead.
The more foresight and planning someone has, the more my instinct is to just cause chaos.
Can't plan for chaos.
If
Catherine,
we barely know what we're doing, how will they?
There's no way they will. Yeah. Catherine leans over and says, I mean, don't we know an Archmage? Theo was like, nah, honey, no, we don't.
No.
We do. I doubt she wants to be involved. I further doubt that we want her to be involved.
Yeah, I would classify her less an archmage and more like a hardcore bitchy tool.
She might, after all, be the one looking. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chris.
No, it's okay. And she might be the one looking for the grimoire, is what you're going to say, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Ah, fuck.
Which means the Gorillas probably stole it from her. And then hid it here for safekeeping.
How did I not think of that?
I really wondered, Chris, at the time. I was like, I'll just leave that alone. Because Gisela went,
let me clarify. That was in character.
Okay, good.
Chris had this thought.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Isabel would never have put it together.
That's fair.
It's just not the sort of lines of thinking that she processes along.
Right. But yeah, Catherine, is like, well, Gisela gave it to me. So yeah, I guess they wanted to.
I invited her.
Oh, you invited Form back.
More explicitly than that, I said his client could also come here openly.
Ooh. Well,
we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
To be fair,
Cross that bridge while it burns again.
yes,
not like she was really going to have a hard time getting in to
That's
begin
what I was
with,
saying.
but
See,
yeah.
she can get there anytime she wants.
I'm just going to non-productively
It's
say,
the principle of the thing, though.
why
It
don't
is.
people just leave us the fuck alone? That's all we really want.
Like, but kind of offhandedly.
Having said
it's
that,
just
I'll
like,
just let that drift
No,
away.
wait. that's great. No, while you're saying that, Legba kind of offhandedly responds to that, right? Like not engaging you directly, but because he's thinking about something, and the kind of way you distractedly respond to what people are saying with giving like a direct answer. He says, "Well, probably because I announced that we were looking for people who
yes.
basically challenge us in Metropolis."
Yeah. It's good that you
kind of
reminded us because
smuttering.
we had sort of almost forgot. This is all your fault. And or the greatest gift I've ever been given in my life.
Anyway,
Catherine says that I really feel like I need to start studying this book then.
Yeah. It's also
Yes,
clear
you
that
should.
we're punching way above our weight, I think.
So
Isabel took
It
that as
doesn't matter how much they weigh, bullets hit them just fine.
it's true.
So Isabel took that personally.
There is one thing.
Just points at Jules' notebook. White leather.
One
If
thing
you're
that
not
came out of
too particular the provenance of that leather, I could probably do some perfected stuff for you.
this is what I suggest. Legba says, "Hear me out. I realize that this is, encroaching on, let's say, a non-enlightened choice. But what if it was a leather suit made of your own? What if it was your own leather? Right? Would that be unethical? You made it, right? Like you could produce it.
It would certainly
And
be
you
a
could
trial
also
to endure, have it made.
You could also make it whatever color you wanted that way. Right? You can give us wings of whatever. You could do that.
It's a
Right?
little much for me.
All right.
Oh,
Nope,
okay.
step out.
All right. I'll talk. Theo and I will talk about this later. I'm curious if that would work. Do you perfect your own skin? Right? He
Hey,
starts
Ralph,
muttering on his
this is
face.
No.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
it.
I apologize.
You're good.
I misunderstood. I really apologize. Sorry.
I'm good.
Sincerely.
I'm good.
Remember, friends, X cards, lines and veils, and all those are actually good. And if I hear one more Reddit post about this makes horror games bad, get the fuck out. Anyways,
I'm good.
Yep. But yes, with that said, white leather outfit, actual leather, cow leather. We sorry, man. The idea of just dropping like Rilla, any one of them, into the scene now was just like, the urge. But I'm like, hang on, follow the notes.
So you just walk past. The thing is, we're all like agitated, right? Somebody who
How many
looks
times
kind
do
of
we
like
say her
her.
name?
Yeah, exactly.
Rilla.
So somebody could walk past out the window and we think it looks like her,
Yeah.
Somebody else. Don't see her face.
But yes, so Catherine mentions that, I'm going to start reading this to see if I can figure out what it is that they care so much of. Because, just to remind you all, it's about putting a mind into a golem and having an ever-living, wandering spirit monster construct thing.
That's right, yeah.
Yep. But then it also has a bunch of other spells of the classic, like, actual mage grimoire side of things as well. So she's like, let's sit down and try and figure out some of this stuff.
I would suggest read, but also like study.
Yeah.
Because there might be stuff hidden and locked in there.
Oh.
Beyond the words on the page.
And then Legba says, "Please inform me when you do, because I have a spell specifically for such an occasion that I developed as we were going on the trial together. That way you won't be so exhausted. So let me know."
Yep. For her, that's the idea behind the sanctum, where she can, because up till now, and she explains all this in more Catherine fashion, but for short, she hasn't had a mage place to be a mage, right? There's the home, there's, what work she does, stuff like that, but she hasn't had a place to be a mage. So for her, that's why she wants her sanctum, which y'all are clearly on board to help her set up. Because
absolutely,
up until now, she hasn't even bothered trying to study the book. It was intimidating and a problem, and it was interesting to her. She's not obsessed with it, but now after studying an archmage spell, she's like, oh, I can do this shit. I might need help, but I can do this. It's not above me. Because of course, if she's coming in as the freshman in high school and you guys are up here as like college master's students, like the difference in knowledge and experience is just a big gulf that she's been intimidated up until, no, good job. We helped you, but you understood, air quotes, an archmage spell. She's like, okay, I can do this. I can actually do this. So that's where she's at.
That's awesome.
I'm looking through my notes real quick. Boop, 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 boop. All right, I don't think y'all missed any of your shenanigans. So now we get to go into, all right, what's our next steps?
I am an unstoppably wise being and cannot be stopped in any way, shape, or form. The consequences of my actions shall roll off my sleeves and go forth into the world without nary a ripple. Which is to say, I could just kill that bitch.
Do you mean the blonde one?
I mean
poetically
whoever.
described? Okay.
Just line somebody up.
Starting with Sister Natalia if we need to.
Oh. See.
Sort of as a stopgap measure of not making that particular version of the spell work.
Well, what we could do. No, actually that wouldn't work. But
Do we know
just hear
that
me
the
out.
spell only works on her?
Yes.
Yeah, it's targeted for her.
The
okay.
conditional duration kind
Is
of
her
thing
specifically?
is
Okay.
Sister Natalia.
Yeah.
There's ways around that, obviously. But yes, that was what it was designed for. So taking her out of play doesn't make the spell inert, but now you have to mess with it to get it to do something else or recast it or whatever. Of course, killing somebody isn't necessarily the end for somebody.
Especially when the seers are involved.
Or an Acanthus is
contracts.
around, or...
Yeah. He says, perhaps we just want her somewhere else. Or maybe we can do something that will lead to her choosing to be somewhere else.
Threats of violence upon her flesh and body.
Well, that's good. But I imagine the dreams of the father kind of function in a similar way for her.
You're proposing we fake a dream from one of the false gods of the supernal?
Legba is open-mouthed, right?
Legba had not been, but now...
He says, yes, I am now proposing that.
No, that's not what I meant by that.
That was hyperbole.
Let me be more specific. I think attempting to imitate them is abhorrent, and is also not a wise choice. However, I think sculpting a dream experience without working our will directly is feasible. And that could be useful. So, I will let us postpone a long discussion of what I'm going to talk about, but I will earmark it this way. When people dream in Purgatory Bluff, they are also connected to Purgatory Bluff. It is something I have not explored thoroughly, but I'm relatively certain of. And I was able to, that there's evidence of that in my own legacy. If I am physically in a place and astrally in a place, I can connect them. That's only happening because it is possible. I'm not doing anything impossible. I'm not an archmage, right? I'm just working with the arcana and how these things function. So there might be a way in the future to make it so that certain people have certain dreams when they're here, or they're unable to have certain dreams.
Like,
But like I said,
people
let's
over here, we don't want to have terrible fucking nightmares.
exactly. Yes.
And this is how Drew introduces Beast the Primordial.
Yeah. Yes. You know, out of character, right? Like I have had a vague like channels and tunnels. Like, what does Legba do? You know, the opener of ways. Is there a way to make it so that there are dream ways in Purgatory Bluff? But like I said, that was an in character and out of character. Like, let's not take up too much time with Legba waxing poetic about his favorite thing, right? So that can be discussed at a later date, but it's relevant to put an earmark on it. So.
Catherine
When do we
leans
answer Sir
over.
Lucan? Go ahead.
Catherine kind of leans over, and again, this is not me spend. I don't know what your guys' next step should be. This is just me contributing to the conversation. Catherine leans over and says, "Well, if we don't want to call in the Archmage, the Pentacle kind of, excuse me, the Diamond Order aren't exactly big fans of the series, so they'd probably want to like stop whatever they're doing too."
Oh.
That is true.
It,
They're
I mean, prison company making allowances, but it's not clear to me that they're all that much better.
they're absolutely that much better. Just by virtue of how bad the Seers are. But again, I have my own gripes with the Diamond Orders, but they are miles ahead of the Seers. I'm more concerned with.
I think if we approach them, though, they're going to want concessions.
I believe that the way that they've marked us out as our own nameless order coven, this is our problem. They leave us alone as long as we don't make problems for them. They're not going to bother us. But I also don't know that they would go fight the seers that are bothering us. And yeah, if they did, they wouldn't do it for free.
Bad idea, Drew here. What if they just take heartache themselves? And they deal with it.
I mean, I would rather they take it. It's a problem. Just by being up there, it's a problem. And if anyone could seal it away, it would probably be the Diamond Orders. But also, I don't really want them to have it either. But we certainly don't have the facilities or the capabilities to deal with it.
Not now. Why don't we search for it? Perhaps we can bargain to get a tool like Sir Lucan has used, and then we could seal it somehow. Why don't we do it ourselves? Isabel is right.
That's what I've been saying this whole time.
He like looks down at the bottle of whiskey. He's like, "How much of this have I had?"
They assume we can do it ourselves. That's why they're trying to take it. That's why they're doing all these things. If they thought they could just come in here and take it from us, they would have already done that.
Yeah. Which means we're stronger than them, and we can kill them with our weapons and bodies.
Jules says, if we could construct something to hold it, I don't know what it is, and I don't know how we would do it, but it would have to be something, but some kind of container, and
Yeah. I mean, they were using a person.
Which, I mean, not it, but I mean, when
Probably.
y'all.
They're probably trying to use an awakened soul.
Need I remind you that there's a story from the good book of a young shepherd who topples a Goliath and then goes on to become one of the wisest kings, but who also leads his people through victory in wars and battles. Just saying. I've heard it cheap before.
And you're not a bad shot, honey.
Thank you.
And we know you will lead us to victory.
Well, who's the
Keeping my mouth shut on all the bad parts of David.
Oh yeah, I know. Trust me, I'm
I
there
mean,
too.
she knows that too.
Yeah.
She really wound it around there.
Boudica. Yeah, very, Isabel just going full Boudica, paint the face. Yeah, let's go fight the Romans. Okay. But it sounds like you guys have some thoughts. So I'll put a pin there in that. As Madame Robert comes around and, cleans up your plates and checks in on y'all as you finish, a late lunch kind of thing. And you all have other tasks to go about. You have people to visit with, spells to double check and maintain, buttons to give away.
Leather jackets to be made.
Yeah. So we can put a pause in there, especially since I did not prepare anything for anything beyond y'all chatting, because I knew y'all would want to get together and talk about stuff, and I also had no idea where you guys would go next.
Yep.
And just to make sure your little sack of surprises is empty now, Mr. Globe.
Oh, he
Nothing
like kind of scratches his forehead and he says, I mean, I do have some things I'm thinking about, but
nothing you've done.
I'm sure you don't really want to hear about those things.
Yeah, there's a lot to process already. So if it's not something you've actually done, you can table that for next time. Maybe.
We'll look at the blueprints and diagrams for your next device and plan. Yeah. Because Chris has mentioned, not Chris, sorry. Ralph has sent me a paragraph of, well, here's this idea I have. And this one, legitimately, I'm like, oh, this is really fun. But that's not a tonight thing. So,
Totally.
So we will wrap up here as everybody kind of gets up from the table. It's the kind of classic sitcom, like everybody's been sitting at the bar, everybody's had a chat, and then we cut to the next scene, wherever that ends up being. But that'll be next episode. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for playing with me. And if you are sitting at home going, wow, this is a really cool game, where can I talk about this more? Well, www.yeetinto.space. Come by the Discord, chat with us, hang out with us, talk about your game, talk about our game, talk about somebody else's game. It's cool. Ask questions about how to play Mage. want to get started, we will absolutely help you. That's half of the conversations that happens in Discord. We have one guy recently, not going to point names, but pops up, hey, new question. And it's like, no, we're here for this. Keep them coming. It's really fun. And if you want to support us monetarily, that's www.staylucky.club. Again, not a requirement. None of us rely on any of this money. It just goes towards art and fun stuff and repairs and stuff like that. Otherwise, thank y'all, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, folks.